I'm really come to talk about a little project that we call School of One. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of School of One. But what is School of One? We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about what it is, so I have context to tell you about how we did it. So we're going to do it in 3 parts. First, I'm going to tell you what the idea is. Then we're going to actually stop and we're going to do a short little 3-minute video that's going to sort of take you to visit one of our schools. And then we're going to follow up with how on earth we made this successful. Because as the title of this presentation says, this is when success means not having all the answers. So what Constance was just talking about, that is success. We basically go into it expecting that everything that we know was wrong and then not getting too attached to it. Now, I used to be a former middle school science teacher, so everything I'm going to say now is sacrilege. So anyone who's out there that believes in the scientific method as I preach, I apologize in advance. But really, we're going in to not get attached to our theories, to really look at the information, see where it takes us, and try to continue to invent. So with that, what is School of One? Well, it is really a reimagining of school, okay? What does school mean? Well, it means different things to different people. As in the last presentation, there were a bunch of kids in the room, and it looked very different to adults than a regular school. But to the kids, they still felt like it was school, right? So everyone has a different idea of what it is, what it could be. So we are putting no bounds on that. We can reimagine it, basically question everything, assume everything can change. We have these workshops where we have these post notes, just like these action collabs, where people make a suggestion. Do kids need homework? And then someone will raise, oh my God, kids have to have homework. That's crazy. Can I have 6th graders with 8th graders? No. You know, there are things that we all hold near and dear to ourselves about what school is. And we try to encourage everybody to rethink and reimagine all of those things. And that's really what School of One is. What we originally had an idea to do is not what we've ended up doing now. And if I'm back in front of you a year from now, it'll be different again because we're not getting attached and we're reimagining it every step along the way. Now, why do we need to do this? We all know the stats. Our schools aren't particularly working. And simply put, kids just aren't getting what they need. And different kids need different things. We keep looking for that silver bullet that will serve all of the kids. And in reality, that's just not true. We haven't found it out there yet. And what we do instead is we keep saying we need better teachers. We need better teachers. We keep putting more on the teachers. Well, there are some good teachers. There are some not so good teachers. We've all had them along the way. But the job itself is just too hard. If you take a look at it, if you take the best teacher that you know, they can get their kids to move about 1 year's worth of growth, maybe 1.5 years worth of growth. And that's your rock star teacher who is highly educated, 25 years of experience, done everything right that we'd ever look for, and they just barely get the job done, okay? And it's not because they're not trying, but it's just too hard. And in any other profession, if we only had a very slim percentage of the population actually being successful in what they were trying to do, we would change the job, okay? So we went into it with these 2 premises. Kids aren't getting what they need, and we can't just keep putting this on the back of our teachers. We have to make the job easier for them to ultimately be successful, okay? So in theory, there should be something on that page. There we go. Let's look at some other things that we've reimagined, right? So if we go back and we look at the stagecoach, today we actually have, the bus that is air conditioned and gets people from here to there and much faster, and you don't get sick when you travel, the whole thing. We look at our telegraph and we go forward and we have the iPhone. Those are not the same. We've done a lot of reimagining along the way. And we can take a look at the typewriter, and now we have MacBook Airs that are 2 inches thick and can do all sorts of things to connect people. But when we take a look at a classroom, here's a classroom from 1909. Besides the fact that this is a black and white picture, and the clothing styles have changed a little bit, it hasn't changed too much. And so we compare it to a classroom from 2009, and there's still a chalkboard in the back. There's color, photo technology has improved, but the classroom itself is still rather similar. So we took a look at what's going on in a classroom. And this particular slide is sort of an amazing one. Because to anyone here who's familiar with education, you're going to say, of course. Okay? But anyone who's not goes, really? I mean, you get parents, everybody's there like, are you kidding me? And what this is just there's a teacher and there's students. Let's take a look at some of our students. Okay? So the first one on the left, has spontaneous crying episodes in class. They're a motivated reader, but they're a level 2. So in New York, it's levels 1 through 4. 4 is good, 1 is bad. Then we have another kid, very shy, no friends, hates working in groups, another level 2. We have one with behavior problems. They're hyperactive. They love technology, another level 2. Got a kid who's tested a 10th grade reading level, and they're a level 4. Another kid who reads New York Times and Wall Street Journal every day, entrepreneurial, truant, level 4, right? And you have all of these kids, any classroom in America, any classroom in the world, and you have kids in different places who need different things. How on earth is the teacher supposed to actually get to all of these kids' needs? Because what ultimately needs to happen is the teacher needs some one-on-one time with that kid to figure out what their interests are, where they're struggling, how they like to learn, okay? And our best teachers find a little bit of time to, differentiate instruction, which is what we all say is happening. But you have 30 kids in the room. Maybe you pulled a couple aside and had them work on something in the back. Maybe you pulled a couple to lunch or after school and could help them and tutor them. But you can't do it for all of them. A teacher has 4 or 5 classes of 30 students. It's 150 kids that are under their watch. And getting to 150 kids every day with what they need is just not what's happening. So the key problem, everybody's experienced this. You're in a classroom. You have 30 kids. Let's say you're teaching them adding fractions. Well, half the class gets it, and half the class doesn't get it. What do you do the next day? Do you move on to subtracting fractions, or do you teach adding fractions again? It's a problem. So our idea was to try to solve for that. So teachers can go out there. There are all sorts of materials. All sorts of vendors create games and online platforms and textbooks and things that different students can do to try to help. But the problem at the end of the day is the teacher is still the bottleneck, because the teacher cannot focus, get all of these materials, learn all of these materials, see what the kids need every day, and connect the two. Okay? So that's what we're trying to do. We help the teacher with the aid of online system to connect the kids with the things that they need to learn each and every day. Okay? And this way, there are many ways that students can learn. Okay? This goes to their interests, but it also goes to freeing up the teacher to be able to work with the kids that they need. So it might be that the best way to learn is with a teacher up in front of the class, talking to the students, and it might be a good way to learn. In fact, it might be the best way to learn, but it doesn't have to be the only way to learn. So here we have some different modalities of learning. We have teacher in a lecture. We have a student working with a virtual tutor. They could be working with somebody someplace else. They could be working with a group as a project. They could be playing different games. There's all different ways that they can learn. And some of them are self-guided, freeing up the teacher to help out some other kids where needed. So what we're hoping is by running our prototype and pilot is that we could change that picture of what a classroom used to be to what it is now to look very different. Okay? Now there are tons and tons of questions about what do you do? Do you still have homework? What kind of space do you need? How does the teacher get their schedule every day? Should a kid have choice in what they're going to learn next? When should they not have choice? There are things that kids don't like to learn a certain way, but in fact, they actually learn well that way. We call it eating your vegetables. When do you force them to eat their vegetables? When do you need to motivate them and give them candy? We have to figure it out. So there were tons of questions in us trying to solve for this. But before I dive into the how, I want to just sort of sum up what it is that we are attempting to do and then show you a short video that we are fortunate enough to have the Robin Hood Foundation put together to help illustrate to everybody and help bring this to life a little bit. So we're trying to give kids what they need, how they need it, when they need it. That's our theme. Okay? And with that, I'm going to invite you into one of our School of One prototype schools, and then we'll talk about how you get here. So with that.
What we see in lots of urban schools is a wide variety of student levels. We've got schools with kids coming into middle school on a 3rd grade level.
They're from different countries, we have different cultures, they speak different languages.
They can be kinesthetic, they can be verbal, they can be visual learners. How do you actually teach to this diverse group of students?
School of One is based on one simple idea, that we are organizing an entire school around the needs of every one student.
I like the online tutors because you get to work with different teachers from all around the world. The other day I was working with a teacher from North Carolina.
Edwin, how many 3s did we just have?
5.
Right.
I like how we get to use computers to learn math because I never did that before.
There are 8 different ways that students can learn, and 5 of them are live, and 3 of them are on computers.
I like to work with other people, but not too many people.
You're working with a small group of kids, one teacher and about 8 kids.
I like the communication with the tutor online. I get scared sometimes if I have to look at a teacher and ask them the question, but sometimes you just type the question and they answer it.
At the end of the day, what happens is the students take a 5-question assessment. If they've passed their test, they move on to another skill.
When it says green, that's like a...
When you have a yellow, you kind of have a down phase because you're kind of sad and you want to achieve more because you know you could do better.
When you get red on your modality, you're like, ah!
If they have not passed the test, then the algorithm figures out a new way to teach the student that specific skill.
As the algorithm gets smarter, as it learns the student's skills, it learns their levels, the student gets smarter, the teachers get smarter. We all grow at the same time.
One of the main ideas of School of One is to have technology take a lot off teachers' plate so they can focus on doing what they came into this profession to do.
The algorithm allows us to teach. It allows us to do what we are trained to do. It allows us to do what the Department of Education has invested in us.
School of One is making me the amazing teacher that I always wanted to be. And I'm grateful for that.
One of the teachers overheard a student say to another student, "I am smart. I'm not stupid." And it made her wonder, how long has this one student been harboring the belief that she was stupid? And the only thing that was really stupid was the way we were teaching her.
Any one of these children can grow up to be anything they want to be. President of the United States, a teacher like me. But because of circumstances of birth, they don't have the opportunity. And the School of One gives them that opportunity. It levels the playing field.
I love my teacher.
I love the algorithm.
I love when a parent comes in and says, "What are you doing here?" Because my daughter is doing all sorts of wild math.
I'm a lot better student now.
It really helps me learn faster.
I love when I see a kid excited about this one connection that was just made.
I love School of One.
Every student in New York City is waiting for School of One.
A little taste of what it is that we're putting together now. They've dramatized it a bit with music and emotional statements, this and that. But we've sort of we've very much taken the approach of, we're going to get this wrong all along the way, okay? And in that, it's sort of a freedom. It's an openness. We're not over-promising. We're not saying it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. We're not saying kids are going to achieve X, Y, and Z. We're saying, we're going to try some things, and we're going to run a number of prototypes, and we're going to fail along the way, and we're going to have theories, and they'll come back and forth, and we'll debate them, and we invite you into that process. But we're not going to make anybody any particular promises, which is the challenge, right? Because everybody wants to know, how many kids are you going to save? So we sort of equate it to, if you take a look at the pharmaceutical industry, how long does it take for a drug to make it from concept to market? Well, it's about 14 years. So when someone says, I'm going to set out to cure cancer, and let's be honest, trying to improve the educational system is probably harder than curing cancer at this point. No one would say after 3 weeks, how many lives have you saved? It's sort of crazy. You have to have a little bit of room. So I'm going to, since we're running a bit low on time, I'm going to skip forward a little bit on how it works. I'm just going to hit one key slide there and then tell you a little bit about the prototype process and then get yanked off stage here. So what we basically do is we form a profile for each student about how they like to learn. And someone says, how do you know that this is how my son or daughter likes to learn? We don't. But over time, we can learn. It's like the Pandora music service, if anybody is familiar. You put in a song, it tries to build a custom radio station for you. The second song that comes out, you probably didn't like. So you give it a thumbs down. Well, we do the same sort of thing. So each day, the kids take a 5-question assessment. They might be in a small group. They might be with Mr. Jones. They might be with Mrs. Smith, whatever it is. If you didn't do well that day's schedule gets a thumbs down. If you did do well, you get a thumbs up. So after we've done a few different things for you, we start learning. Hey, you learn well in small groups. You learn well with Mr. Jones. And we sort of build that profile. And that's what happens each day. We also learn about the lessons themselves. So we learn about the student. We learn what lessons work. And we learn where you are. So we are trying to teach you adding fractions. Were you one of the kids that learned adding fractions today or not? And each day, this runs through and generates a teacher schedule and a student schedule. Now, there's all sorts of cultural change that needs to happen for a teacher to be able to get their schedule each day and feel comfortable with that. Believe me, because I'm out of time, that we have some different ways to tackle that. For a student, it's not so different. They normally walked in the room. They didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. And therefore, finding that out today in this kind of way where it's rescheduled for them every day isn't as big of a change. I have a couple different slides on what that system's actually doing. But if you think about Pandora and how it learns about you, you have the right idea. So our approach, okay, I can't stress it enough. You want to start out with the invention portion of this. Allow yourself space to learn. Build in time to try new things. Some things work, some things won't. It's okay. Don't promise that your kids will improve by 10% on this test when you have no information for that. Okay? And don't run a program that's super long. What we did is we ran a 20-day program, okay, to start. And we said, we're going to learn a bunch of stuff. And before that, people had brought in senior consultants from the Parthenon group and Gartner and folks to say, here's the strategy of how you're going to do this. And after months of looking at that, we said, there's too many questions. We had like 700 and some questions that we could have debated for 100 years based on research. And we said, let's just try it. So 12 of us got together and we said on May 11, 2009, and we launched a school on July 6th. And we just launched a 20-day summer school program. And all I can say is choosing the right people is important. We got what we call parachute people, okay? So a lot of people say winners are the ones who want the ball when the game's on the line. We want the parachute people. Those are like your special ops people that don't know what they're going to do, and you give them the envelope when they go over the fence, and then they have to somehow solve the problem. That's what we did. And so there were 12 of us. And what we really did was we tried to launch the first day, and we thought we were so smart, and we had this computer program that could figure the whole thing out, and it didn't work at all. We pulled an all-nighter, and we tried it the second day, and it didn't work at all. And we tried it the third day, and again, it did not work at all. But the fourth day, it kind of worked. And there was something there. What it required was our whole computer programs didn't work because there was all this stuff we hadn't taken into consideration. But myself and one other person locked ourselves in a room and would schedule the kids every night. And first there was that pride, like John Henry beating the machine, but that wore off rather quickly. But what we had at the end was, we actually had to schedule the 80 kids every day for the 20 days, or actually the 16 days, because the first 4 days didn't work at all. And at the end we had our manual schedules, and we had the computer-generated ones. And then we took 3 months, and we said, how do we make the computer do this? And then we tried an after-school program. And then we tried 6 weeks after the big state test in May, running it in school. And we were learning all sorts of operations and those types of things. And we just continued to make sure there was room to experiment. Now that along the way, we measured it so we could measure our performance, okay? So we know what we could do. So then in the future, when we're fundraising and going into future phases, we could make some promises or some commitments about what we would do. But wait until you have that information and give yourself that space to do it. And the last part there is scaling. Don't push yourself to scale until you're ready and you know what you're doing. Invention at scale is a problem. And when you had what was a small problem with 80 kids is a huge problem with 2,000 kids. Okay? So give yourself that type of space. And be willing to throw things out. Be willing to learn again. So the last thing I'm going to say here is we took what we call a yellow, green, blue approach. Okay? Yellow are building things out of Scotch tape and bubble gum, essentially, so that you're willing to completely throw it away and you invent it and you figure it out that day and you don't say, well, that's a problem. It's going to take me 4 weeks to figure out what to do about it. Okay? Green is when you sort of stabilize that. It's the version that could work at scale, but not for thousands of schools, but maybe 3 or 5 schools. You've proven it. You can do your measurement on it. You can go back and build a more robust system. And blue is when you say, OK, we got this figured out. We're going to build the world-class enterprise version that can go out to everybody and help everybody along the way. Now, you plan to throw out yellow and green, which funders hate. They're like, what, you're going to take my money and throw it away? But you're going to learn, and you're going to save more. You're going to spend less money trying to learn on a small scale with things that you can throw away, rather than surmising that you have it all right from the start, having all the meetings that say, here are the requirements, you have a hard decision to make, and just deciding what it is. And then you end up down the road because it's something you can't change. If you build it in sort of a prototypey way, it gives you room to be successful. So the sort of moral of our story is that we just had an idea, just sort of 2 of us from the start, and we've grown along the way. We've given ourselves room to fail. We've expected to fail at every step along the way, but the promise is the only thing that we said we were going to do is learn, and to try to adapt, and to try to help these students and those teachers, and really build a partnership with our schools, and always keep in mind how we can scale in the end. So. For what it's worth, I hope that's helpful for folks. I hope this gives some insight. And we do tours at our School of One schools in New York City about 3 days a week at this point as we've become a tourist attraction. So we invite anybody to come out. We do a more in-depth tour about how it actually works. And part of our learning process is by having people come on tours, ask us questions, and contribute. So really encourage everybody to do that. Thank you very much.